Well, welcome Year 10 to Lesson 14 of our Flipped Classroom tutorials. Now you've been looking at equations for the last week, and this lesson we're going to look at equations that involve fractions. Alright, so let's look at an easy example. X over 5 equals 2. Now we know that this can also be written as x divided by 5 equals 2. And if we're going to look at this like we have for the last week as any normal equation, we look at what we need to get rid of, which is the 5. We look at the operation attached to it, which is divided by 5, and we do the opposite to both sides. If we did this, we would remove everything and x would simply equal 10. Alright, so let's look at a harder example that involves fractions and equations. The process to this is exactly the same. If you ever need to remove the bottom of a fraction, you must always multiply the bottom of the fraction out, and do this on both sides. So if the equation is x plus 2 over 5 equals minus 1, we need to times both sides of the equation by what's on the bottom of the fraction, 5. If we do so, we would simply get rid of it on the left hand side and it would become x plus 2, and on the right hand side we would times minus 1 by 5 to get minus 5. So that's the easiest way to think about getting rid of a fraction. Just times everything by the bottom. If we go further, we need to get rid of the 2, so minus 2 from both sides. We would eventually get down to simply x equals minus 7. Alright, so let's look at a harder example where you have fractions in two places on or within one equation. So in this case we've got a fraction on the left hand side and a fraction on the right hand side. Now the easiest way or the quickest way to remove the numbers at the bottom of the fraction, what we need to do is to cross multiply the bottoms of the fraction out. What this looks like is that we need to multiply the bottom of one fraction by the top of the other. In this case, we are going to times the left hand side by 3 and the right hand side by 5, and in doing so remove the bottom of the fraction. Now just have a quick look on the left hand side. We must times all of x plus 2 by 3. So we'd look at actually opening some brackets up and have 3 outside of x plus 2 equals 2 times 5. So we've simply cross multiplied the bottom of the fractions out. Now we looked at expanding in class. If you expand or remove the brackets on the left hand side, we're left with 3x plus 6, and our answer on the right hand side at the moment is 10. We then need to get rid of the 6, so we need to minus 6 from both sides, and we'd be left with 3x equals 4. Now we need to get rid of the 3, so divide both sides of the equation by 3. We'd be left with x equals 4 over 3. Okay, so let's look at an even harder example. And once again, this equation has two fractions in it. And the first thing we're going to do, that if we see two fractions, we're going to cross multiply, or do the quick method, cross multiply both of the bottom of the fractions out. So what does this look like? We're going to times both fractions by 10 to get rid of the 10, and we're going to times both fractions by 5 to get rid of the 5. But also remember, whatever you do to one side, we must do to the other. So if we times the left hand side by 10 and by 5, we're going to have to times the right hand side also by 10 and 5. So if you cross multiplied these out, we'd be left with 2m times 10, which is 20m, m times minus 5, which is minus 5m, equals 1 times 10 times 5, which would be 50. Now this looks easier to solve. We can now group our terms on the left hand side, so 20m minus 5m would simply give us 15m equals 50. Now we want to get rid of the 15. We know it's 15 times m, so divide both sides by 15, and we'd simply be left with m equals 50 over 15. Okay, so we'll go over this in class again, the three ways of actually looking at fractions within equations, and get you a bit quicker when you're looking at cross multiplication. So I look forward to seeing you in class this week, Year 10.